Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a question. Why do we live in a world where oversharing has become a virtue, but wisdom has become a mystery? Today, we're going to talk about something profound. Not just about what wise people do, but what they don't do. Because here's the truth, a wise person hides their next move. A wise person understands that movement does not require an announcement. There's a power in working quietly, building steadily, and allowing the results to speak for themselves. In a culture obsessed with sharing, posting, and proving, the truly wise have learned to withhold their plans, not out of fear or insecurity, but out of strategy and discipline. When you tell everyone what you're about to do, you invite 1,000 opinions before the first step is even taken. Everyone suddenly becomes an expert on your journey. Everyone has a warning, a suggestion, or worse, a reason why it won't work. But the truth is, most people aren't qualified to advise you on a path they've never walked. And if you listen too closely to them, you might delay, detour, or even abandon the mission entirely. The wise person doesn't need to broadcast the blueprint. They understand that a seed grows best when it's underground, shielded from wind, from noise, from interruption. And that's how they treat their dreams, quiet, hidden, guarded, because it's not time yet. This isn't about being mysterious for the sake of pride. This is about protecting the fragility of vision. At the beginning, every great idea is vulnerable. It's not fully formed, and it can't yet withstand the pressure of public scrutiny. A wise person keeps their next move private because they know it's not ready to be defended, it's still being developed. Think about a master chess player. They don't narrate their next strategy before they move. They don't say, "Watch this, I'm about to take your queen in 3 moves." They simply observe, calculate, and act. The strength is in the precision, not the performance. Wise people operate with that same mindset. They understand that people are not always rooting for your rise. Some are competing quietly, some are threatened. Some simply don't understand, and that misunderstanding alone can become resistance. We often share too much too soon because we crave affirmation. We want someone to say, "That's a great idea," or "Wow, you're going places." But affirmation is a drug, and when we depend on it, we become addicted to approval instead of being committed to action. Wise people don't need a crowd to cheer for them. They're not chasing applause. They're pursuing alignment with their purpose, their timing, and their inner peace. And here's another uncomfortable truth. The more people know your plans, the more they feel entitled to track your progress. Every delay becomes a disappointment. Every change of direction feels like failure in their eyes. And before you know it, your process has become a performance. The wise person avoids this by keeping their plans close to the chest, allowing space to pivot, to fail privately, and to restart without external pressure. Now, this doesn't mean you can't have advisors or confidants. It means you must be intentional about who gets access to your vision. Not everyone deserves a seat at the strategy table. Not everyone should hear what's next, because not everyone wants to see it succeed. When a wise person moves, it's not loud, it's not theatrical, it's effective, and when the results finally show, they don't need to explain anything. The impact speaks for itself, and by then, it's too late for interference, too late for sabotage, too late for doubt to creep in. The vision has matured, and it's ready to face the world. So remember this, the next time you're tempted to share your dream, pause, ask yourself, is this the right time? Or do I simply want to be seen? The wise person knows the difference. And because of that, they don't just take steps. They take strategic steps, silently, powerfully. Successfully, a wise person hides their pain. Pain is a universal experience. Everyone faces it. Loss, betrayal, failure, heartbreak, disappointment. But not everyone treats it the same way. In today's world, we've been conditioned to wear our pain as a badge of honor, to talk about it loudly, to share it frequently, to turn it into content. And while there's healing in honesty, there's a line between vulnerability and volatility. Wise people have learned how to navigate that line with intention. A wise person hides their pain, not because they are fake, not because they are cold, but because they understand the sacredness of suffering. They recognize that pain is not meant for display. It's meant for development. It's a classroom, not a platform. And when you rush to publicize what you haven't yet processed, you risk turning pain into performance. You turn healing into spectacle. We all want someone to understand us. That's human. But the wise person knows that not every ear is safe, not every listener is compassionate, and not every space is meant to hold the weight of your wounds. They're selective about where their pain is placed. They don't need to bleed publicly in order to feel real. They know the difference between release and recklessness. Pain, when handled wisely, becomes power. But that only happens in silence, when it's sat with, studied, and worked through. The wise don't run from pain, but they don't parade it either. They take it into the quiet spaces of reflection. They ask questions others are too distracted to consider. What is this pain teaching me? What patterns brought me here? How can I transform this suffering into strategy? Pain becomes dangerous when it becomes identity. And that's what many people do today. They turn their story of pain into a script they perform for attention, for sympathy, for validation. But wise people refuse to let their scars define them. They know that what hurts them doesn't have to hold them. SEMON SINEK often reminds us that the best leaders are not the loudest, but the clearest. Clarity comes through inner work, not external applause. Wise people do that inner work. They cry in solitude, they wrestle in silence, they recover behind closed doors. And because of that, when they show up, they bring healing, not hurt. They lead from lessons, not wounds. A wise person doesn't deny pain. They just refuse to distribute it irresponsibly. There is a difference between being authentic and being impulsive. Not every moment of sadness deserves a post. Not every breakdown needs a broadcast. There is a kind of dignity in discretion, and wisdom is dignified. People often confuse silence with suppression, but for the wise, silence is strength. They know the value of giving themselves the privacy to process. They know that every time they overshare unhealed pain, they give it more power. They invite unqualified voices to speak into something sacred, and that can slow their healing or distort their perspective. The wise are not emotionally distant. They are emotionally intelligent. They know when to speak and when to stay silent. They know who can hold their pain with care and who will use it carelessly, and because of that, they avoid unnecessary drama. They preserve their energy. They stay grounded while others spiral. When the time comes to share, they do so from a place of wisdom, not woundedness. Their stories inspire because they've been shaped by time, maturity, and self-awareness. Their pain doesn't make them victims. It makes them vessels, vessels of strength, of insight, of compassion. The world may never know how many nights they cried, how many battles they fought, or how deep the pain ran. And that's okay, because wise people aren't trying to be understood. They're trying to become whole, and that process rarely happens in the spotlight. It happens in silence, in stillness, in sacred spaces known only to them and to God. A wise person hides their wealth in a culture driven by visibility. Wealth has become a spectacle. The house, the car, the watch, the shoes, it's all curated to convince the world of success. But here's what the wise know. Real wealth doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be stewarded. A wise person hides their wealth not because they are stingy, not because they are insecure, but because they understand the responsibility that comes with prosperity. Wealth, in the hands of the wise, is not a flex, it's a tool. It's not there to impress people, it's there to bless people. When wealth becomes part of your identity, you've already lost control of it. You begin to need it to be someone, you need it to be relevant. You need it to feel validated, but wise people don't use wealth to prove their worth. They use it to fulfill their purpose. There's a quiet confidence that wise people carry. You won't see it in a social media highlight reel. You won't hear them name, drop investments, or broadcast net worth, or announce paydays, because they don't chase attention. They create impact. They live below their means. They give generously but quietly. They invest deeply but discreetly, because they understand this timeless truth. If you have to constantly show people how rich you are, you're not as rich as you think. SEMON SINEK teaches that true leadership isn't about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. Wise people see wealth the same way. It's not about how much they can accumulate, it's about how much they can activate. Their money doesn't just sit, it moves, but it moves with purpose, it builds, it serves. It multiplies good. Most people want to appear wealthy, the wise choose to be wealthy. Quietly, consistently, and sustainably. They understand that once you start living for the applause, you start dying by the silence. That's why they choose humility over hype. They let others talk while they build. They let others post while they plan. And while the crowd chases clout, the wise are creating legacy. You won't see them taking photos next to their cars. You won't find them bragging about their bank statements. You won't hear them trying to convince the room of their success. because the truly wise understand that wealth without discretion becomes a liability. The moment you make your wealth loud, you invite entitlement, envy, and unrealistic expectations. The moment you make your money your identity, you make your peace vulnerable to every economic shift. A wise person doesn't hide their wealth to be deceptive. They hide it because they value freedom. When no one knows what you have, you are free to move without fear, to give without pressure, to grow without limitation. There's protection in privacy. There's power in restraint. Warren Buffett lives in the same house he bought in 1958, not because he can't upgrade, but because he doesn't need to. His lifestyle isn't about showing the world who he is. It's about staying true to what works. That's wisdom, that's intentionality. Wise people don't need to be noticed to feel valuable. They've mastered the art of quiet abundance. They know that wealth, when handled with maturity, doesn't make noise, it makes change. It changes lives, it builds futures, and it funds dreams. But none of that requires a spotlight. So while others chase the image of success, the wise remain focused on the function of wealth, stewardship, sustainability, and service. And in doing so, they gain something that money can't buy. Respect, peace, and lagaka. A wise person hides their next struggle. There is a deep kind of wisdom that comes from living through storms and learning not to announce the forecast every time dark clouds appear. A wise person hides their next struggle, not because they are dishonest, not because they are trying to appear perfect, but because they understand the power of containment. When life starts to press in again, when challenges begin to rise, they don't panic out loud. They prepare inwardly. We live in a culture that encourages overexposure. The moment we feel discomfort, we post about it. The moment we fear failure, we speak it out loud, sometimes to people who don't have the capacity, the care, or the character to help us carry it. But a wise person knows that some battles must be fought in silence, not out of pride, but out of strategy. You don't strengthen your foundation by announcing every crack. You strengthen it by reinforcing it quietly, brick by brick, until it can withstand what's coming. That's how wise people handle their struggles. They don't bring everyone into the room when life gets hard. They know that pain in the wrong hands becomes gossip, fear in the wrong atmosphere breeds doubt. Struggle in the wrong company invites sabotage, so they go inward, they anchor deeper, they plan before they speak. SEMON SINEK often reminds us that leadership isn't about controlling the room, it's about holding the room. The same principle applies to personal challenges. A wise person doesn't let their next struggle consume the atmosphere. They don't let it bleed into relationships, into conversations, or into every corner of their mind. Instead, they compartmentalize, not to avoid, but to approach it with strength, order, and clarity. You don't owe everyone a front row seat to your wrestle. You don't need to explain the storm before it passes. Wise people have learned that struggles are sacred, especially the next one, especially the one that's still forming, still unfolding, still hard to define. They protect the unknown because they know that not all challenges should be public before they are understood privately. And let's be honest, when people know what you're struggling with, they begin to treat you differently. Sometimes they look at you with pity, other times with judgment. They project their fears onto your situation. They offer unhelpful advice, or worse, they wait for the worst to happen. But wise people don't give anyone that power. They struggle silently, not because they're weak, but because they're focused. There is a dignity in discretion. There is strength in restraint. The wise person is not denying their struggle. They're just deciding when and how it gets expressed. They may cry in the shower, they may journal through the night, they may pray more than they speak. But they don't allow the struggle to become a spectacle. They understand that most growth happens beneath the surface. The seed struggles underground long before it breaks through the soil, and if you dig it up too early to show someone, you kill the process. In the same way, revealing your next struggle too soon can weaken your resolve, distract your focus, and invite unnecessary interference. Wise people know when to reach out, but they also know when to reach in. They don't isolate out of fear, they isolate for clarity, for strength, for transformation. They've learned that not all pain is meant to be shared right away. Some of it is meant to build something within you before anyone else even knows it exists. So while others are broadcasting their stress, the wise are building their stamina. While others are narrating their chaos, the wise are navigating quietly, steadily, and with intention. Because they know storms are inevitable, but survival is strategic, and the best way to face the next